All right, the property prequel, be in the know before you buy. Really excited about today's guest and episode. We're going to dive deep on some really hot topics right now. And also just want to say a huge thank you, as always, for either sharing, tagging. So if there is a guest in mind, obviously flick us a message and we'll do our best to get them on. Our goal is to provide impact to everyone listening out there. And yeah, thanks so much for all the feedback. We trialed a bit of a Q&A app, so be on the lookout. We put it on my story, a bit of a Q&A. If there's any questions around that, I'm doing a bit of a different concept there. So be on the lookout for that. But yeah, last week's set was really positive feedback, so do appreciate it. Today's guest, Justin Nickerson, Director, Apollo Auctions. Everyone knows Justin Nickerson. He's I know he doesn't like it, but Australasia's #1 auctioneer. In all honesty, if there's anything temperature check on the market, he's my go-to guy. Calls so many auctions, very good operator. And I don't know if Justin knows this, but our first ever repeat guest, our second, and generally I'm thinking about it, that probably means two things. We're either light on guests and we know to call in, or the latter, which is true. I thought it'd be very timely where the market's at and get Justin in. He's coming off the back of actually keynote speaker at ARIC conference. And all honesty, mate, I know you're a mate of mine, but even my team, it was top 3 speeches of the whole conference. And that wasn't only in our office. You know, everyone's like, oh, fuck, how good was Justin's talk? So, mate, I'm really privileged to have you on again.
Thank you, mate. My first instinct, knowing I was coming back again, was that you're really scratching around the guests. So you run through the list and you're back and start the list again. But I'll pretend like it's a compliment, and I'll pretend like that you've had letter, email after email demanding that I come back on. So I'm back by popular demand.
Yeah, mate. In all honesty, mate, we've got a few guests lined up pretty much the rest of the year, and we actually had to get you on for where things are at. A key point I want to chat about today, and it's funny, I've used this term a lot with clients and helping them when they're not sure on the market. And it was super cool when I heard you talking about at ARIC, the gap, like the buyer-seller gap. Like I love talking around that. I've done some content around it before, but a lot of your speech was revolved around that. And I thought today will add a real good amount of value is maybe the gap from a buyer's perspective and a seller's perspective, maybe your tips. But firstly, for anyone who doesn't understand, like how can you explain, I guess, I think it's huge, like the gap. Like what's if someone was to say, oh, Justin, explain a little bit of what this whole gap is.
Yeah, so if we took a lighthearted approach to it, we say, look, there's always 2 rules of real estate. Rule number 1 is that sellers always want too much for their home. And rule number 2 is the buyers don't want to pay requisite value. So when we
Very true, by the way.
It is, yeah. And we say it, tongue in cheek, but it is true.
There's always a gap, yeah.
Yeah, and you understand that's just human emotion, and there's nothing wrong with either of those things. That's not offensive to buyers or to sellers that say that. They just have conflicting agendas, and that's okay. When we talk about the gap, we talk about how big is the distance between the two parties at any particular point in time, because there's always a distance, and we say, look, the middle point is transaction zone, which is where sellers and buyers meet together and a transaction happens. But the middle is very rarely the middle where it's fairly balanced between both. So at the moment, we have a situation where our sellers are sitting higher above the market than the buyers are sitting below it. So on average, our sellers are sitting, with their initial expectations, somewhere between 10 and 11% above the market. So that means a seller statistically will have to adjust their expectations by 10 or 11% to get them down into the right bracket to sell it. Conversely, our buyers opening offers and where they first engage in a property is roughly 5% below. So it's just under 5%, but we can round it off to 5. So the gap between our sellers and our buyers is roughly 15% at the moment, which seems like a lot, but it's actually not that big. We've had larger gaps in various points of the market that have been bigger. And it's just a case in point that everyone needs to recalibrate their expectations if they want to buy or sell a property at the moment. That's just the reality.
Mate, key one there. So that's really clear understanding. I love that. How often or when would you temperature check that gap? Rough figures, 15%-ish is kind of the gap at the moment between the two across the board. Obviously, a lot of variables. How often do you think that gap changes? Like, is it a micro thing, or is it more like over a year, 6 months, or 2 years?
Yeah, it's generally a gradual change more than an instant change. The only thing is that micro events can affect it and shift it to a certain extent. So little things like interest rates being held, interest rates being put up can affect that gap relatively quickly, one way or another. So what we find is when interest rates get held, sellers tend to bounce up because they think, okay, we're good now. We've been through the worst of it, et cetera, and they bounce up. When interest rates drop, then buyers fall away further. So there's always kind of little changes that happen at any particular point in time, but it's never going to be an equilibrium where both parties are going to be exactly at zero and the gap's never going to be zero. There's always going to be a gap present, but it's just understanding, and particularly from my role, which is working predominantly with agents, but also working with buyers and sellers on a kind of transactional basis. It's understanding that gap is present, understanding the reasons why. And I guess working with both parties to say, look, understand that if you want to make this transaction happen, you're going to have to change your thinking. Because if you sit with your thinking statistically, you're never going to reach that zone that you need to reach for a sale to happen.
So what I'm hearing there is firstly being mindful of the gap, like in first instance. Second to that, it's around helping educate on both sides, I'm hearing, because you said it exactly right, and I agree. Buyers, I obviously work with all buyers. I'm always trying to get the best result for buyers, but same with them. Yeah, there's always they always think it's worth a lot less.
And it's a really good case in point, because if you walk into an auction and I walk into an auction, we actually want the same outcome.
Yeah,
we want the property to sell, both of us. We just have different agendas. I want it to sell to anyone for as much as I can. You want it to sell to you for as little as possible. So the outcomes are still the same. It's just the agendas that are different. So I think understanding that, and what we find is really important is not letting emotion come in the way, particularly in a negotiation sense. And buyers and sellers, this is where kind of, I guess, professionals and what they do can be really powerful. Both agents and auctioneers on the seller side, buyers agents, particularly on a buyer's side, is they don't necessarily have that same emotion. They don't have that underlying emotion that can sometimes get in the way of a sale happening. And those emotions can be greed, or they can be naivety, or it can be arrogance, or it can be pride, or like there's all these range of emotions that if they get in the way, they will stop a sale from happening. So I guess when I say we, and I talk about our team, but particularly myself, is I pride myself in negotiation. I'm the most unemotional person in the room.
Yeah.
Even if a buyer says something, you don't bite back. If a seller says something, you don't bite back. Like, if I can keep it steady and calm, that'll allow me to do my job more effectively, even if other people in the room are more emotional than I am.
Well, yeah, mate. I love that. I think we talk about it at our team, and a key role for us as buyers. I say to my clients a lot, like, at the end of the day, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I'm actually not going to cry if we miss out, or I'm going to be honest when we need to walk away, because you're exactly right. Like, emotions can kill a deal. 100%. Quick one on that.
I'll just pause on that, because the line you just said, I actually say the same line but differently. The line I say to sellers and to buyers is, look, with respect, I'm getting paid whether you buy or sell this property or not. I'm not here to make something happen to benefit me. If I say something, it's because I genuinely believe it. And it's for your best interest and not mine. 100%. And when you, particularly as an auctioneer, when you're getting paid a fee for service and not a fee on outcome, you can be that, because they know that it's not going to benefit me if it sells or doesn't sell. Therefore, I'm not trying to shoehorn them into something that's going to benefit me. Sorry, mate.
No, that's a great point. Key one there, I'm really interested to know. I think this will add a lot of value. What do you feel? Let's put buyers and sellers. There could be some overarching, because I love human psychology, all those. What would you say the three biggest killers of a deal emotion-wise are? Like, you named a few there, but what, from your experience, you're the goat in this space, what do you think the three killers of a deal are?
Well, a question without notice. I pride myself on my ability to think on my feet, so I'm going to put myself under pressure here. They're in no particular order, because I don't have the capacity to put them in order at the moment. The first one I would say is pride.
Yeah.
So that's a huge one. People that don't want to be seen to lose face, or people that don't want to, I guess, acknowledge that they're not an expert in that space or don't understand something, and not owning that is a big one. So, you go in a situation and the buyer will stubbornly refuse to move because they just want to have a win. And the seller, won't move because they want to have a win. It's like, well, the win is both of you getting what you want, which is the property selling. Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't really, like, it matters, but it doesn't really matter whether it's a 5 on the end or a 0. Like, from a buyer's point of view, the bank's probably funding it anyway. It's going to make it probably an extra $12 a month on your repayments that you're not going to notice whether it's there or not. It actually doesn't matter. And on the seller's side, you're probably going to spend that money celebrating or, moving costs. Like you're not going to miss it anyway. So that pride is a big one that gets in the way. I think the second deal killer is hanging on to the past, and that's particularly on sellers.
Great one.
So, well, our property was worth X this moment, therefore it has to be worth X today. Our market is no different to every other market. It's a moving commodity market. Sure, our market moves slower than crypto or gold or currency or anything, but our market is still a market. It goes on supply and demand. So what your property was worth at some point in time bears no relevance to what it's worth today. At all. So I guess from seller's point of view, particularly coming off the back of 2021, which was an amazing year, hanging on to what it was worth then, saying, well, it was worth X, therefore it has to be worth Y. There's no have to be in this marketplace. And we hear this all the time that sellers will say to us, well, the land's worth X and the build's worth Y, therefore the replacement cost is XY, therefore it's got to be worth XY. And we're like, well, we're yet to meet a buyer who's going to knock it over and rebuild it exactly as it is. So replacement costs are really largely irrelevant. That doesn't matter.
Great point.
The third one I would say is a combination of naivety and maybe inexperience, which I know we mentioned earlier, but naivety and inexperience, and that's thinking that the other party will do something based upon how you feel rather than based upon how that party operates. I know that's a very convoluted statement, but to give you an example, we'll have sellers that will say to us, well, we need to get X for our property because we have to do Y. Yeah. We want to buy a property over here, therefore ours has to achieve this. On the same side, we have buyers that say, well, our budget is X, therefore we're going to buy this property for X. Well, your budget bears no resemblance to what this property is worth. And we say this to sellers all the time. One of the lines that we use, and it's said directly, but it's said with empathy, is the hardest part we have in these situations is the buyers don't buy your circumstances, they just buy your home. So a buyer's not here to walk in and take on your circumstances and fund your move or anything else. They're purely and simply going to buy what's in front of them.
Wow. Anyone out there, rewind that. That's a classic. Because
hopefully there's no sellers listening.
But
I heard that one already, Justin. You can't use that one on me, But it's true.
It's very true, though. Yeah. It's very true. But also, mate, you obviously work for sellers and mate, I work for buyers and I use similar stuff with buyers as well. It's like, you're exactly right. Like your circumstance and your budget sometimes isn't an empathy point for the seller. Like you're exactly right.
And the past history thing works against buyers too. Buyers will say, well, the one down the road sold for X, therefore this one's worth Y. Well, the one down the road's gone. So you can't buy that one anymore. So what that sold for, sure, it's going to help you with your understanding here, but that's not a ceiling on this property because you literally can't buy that home anymore. It's gone. And on the flip side with the seller, if they say the one down the road sold for X and therefore ours is worth Y, well, the one down the road, that buyer who bought that and paid that price is now removed from the market. So it's actually not relevant what they've paid. What's more relevant is where was the next offer behind that person from the next live buyer in the market, because that's actually the new level of the market. Yeah. That buyer has been removed. But it's about, again, just not being emotional. That's the biggest thing is, the old saying that pride comes before a fall. Like, we're not there to try and force people to do things. All we do is try and be clear and unemotional and point out the realities of situations.
So you had pride. Naivety was a third. What was the middle one? Just had mine, mate.
Like holding on to history.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So Justin Nickerson, 3 killer to a deal. Pride, holding on to past history, and naivety.
Yep.
Love it. Unbelievable.
Can I tell you the best negotiator I've ever met?
Yep.
My 3-year-old daughter.
Why is that?
She doesn't negotiate. There's no negotiation. It's either I get what I want or I throw myself on the floor with my fists pumping on the ground. So that might be my new strategy or new technique. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And one of my favorites is obviously creating win-win, but you've pretty much helped give that confidence that the best negotiation. And then, we've done deals together and things like that. And at the end of the day, you go into the post-sale and you see, I bring my client out, the seller, the agent brings their client, mate, everyone's happy.
Yeah.
And they're the best moments. And at the end of the day, you're exactly right. I think you nailed it. Sometimes everyone's actually trying to get a result at the end of the day.
And I think big picture, particularly if you're going to buy the home and you're going to be there for a long period of time, in 10 years or 15 years, you're not going to remember if you paid 1,812 or 1,818 or 1,816 and a half. You just remember that you bought it and you live there. And the same thing is the sellers, if I rang you up in 3 months' time and asked you what you sold this one for, you probably won't remember the exact number. What you remember is that you sold and you got to move on to where you wanted to go. Yeah. So it is providing that little bit of context and bigger picture, because we all become prisoners of the moment, right? Like, we're in that moment and we get fixated on numbers and it's got to get to here, it's got to get to there. Like, big picture, let's just look at big outcomes. The big outcomes is you want to move on with your life. We're trying to make that happen. The buyer wants to move into your property. We're trying to make that happen as well. And, we have sellers that very reluctantly accept things, begrudgingly, unhappily. And then you're exactly right. Half an hour later, when they're out there having a champagne with the buyers, they're happy as Larry, because it did what they wanted to do, which got them to move on.
People always ask sometimes, like, oh, Matt, what's it worth and things like that. And, there's data, but there's also, I always say, there's a story behind every dwelling. And at the end of the day, that's a key as well. Would you agree with, like, sellers and the motivation, basically?
Yeah.
Deal motivation, yeah.
Very much so. And we say there's 3 elements to a purchase price. One is historical evidence, so the historical evidence they use. Second one is hypothetical factors. So how do they feel about their present situation, so their employment status, their financial position, and then the macro, which is how do they feel about, like, the unemployment of the country, political stability, the market in general, and then last one is emotional attachment. So we call it, the historical, hypothetical, and emotional. They're the 3 things that will constitute what a buyer will pay, and then competition is kind of the X factor to the side to that. But the cool thing about most of the properties we sell, unless you're selling in kind of high-rise dwellings or apartment blocks, is all of our properties are different. Yeah. So they're all kind of unique in their own way, and that's challenging because it means it's harder to get a baseline on price, but it's also a bit more exciting because everything's different.
Yeah. If someone was to ask you, Justin, because I get this question a lot as well, and, like, people always want to know the answer of this. Like, what would you say if you're a buyer, you're now a buyer, or you've bought a lot of property, and someone's like, Justin, what's it worth? like, what's the simplest way to respond to that, you feel? Because there's so many variables, isn't it? And there's so many different factors, but what could be some key things that plug into some buyers out there who are so fixated on paying the right, what it's worth or below what it's worth? Like, if someone's asked you, Justin, what's this worth? Like, you're not representing anyone, just purely what's this worth? What would you say to that buyer?
Well, the standard answer that's been around real estate for 50 years has been it's worth what a buyer's prepared to pay. And that still rings true today. So, there's sales that occur all the time that sell for lights out prices that you're like, I can't believe it sold for that, but that's what it's worth. On the same flip side, something might sell at a figure that you can't believe it sold for on the low side, and that's what that's worth. So I think if that was me and a buyer and they were seriously as a buyer, I'd try and just steer them away from that mindset. Yeah. Like, what it's worth is irrelevant. Like, unless you're getting a valuation done, and that's maybe the legal definition of what something is worth, but unless you're getting a valuation done, it's going to be worth what it sells for. What you need to focus on is what price that you would pay for it. And if that price is the top of the market, then that's what it's going to be worth, because it's going to sell to you, and that's the new worth. Again, this comes into this fixation around winning a transaction.
True.
I've got a person I know very, very well, and one of my bugbears about them is they always have to win. Like, they've just got to win. Like, they've got to win every transaction. And it's like sometimes, they're well and truly in front and they're still pushing for a little bit more just to win. It's like, you don't need to win at all costs, because sometimes that win at all costs will cost you a good win you're going to have anyway. Yeah, so we say with buyers, you just, if you need to think about it rationally, think about your 3 prices that you have. That's the dream price that you could be over the moon if you bought it for. The fair price, so based upon your market research, this is what you think a fair, appropriate price would be. And then your absolute price, which is if it goes for $1 more than that, you wouldn't be a buyer. Yeah. They're the numbers you need to worry about. Whether they match up with what it's worth is really irrelevant.
Because once the sold stickers on, that's the new value.
That's the worth. Yeah, that's it. And then everyone around it's going to point at that and say, well, that's the new normal. That's what it's worth. So this fear comes in more, obviously, when the market starts to decline, because people don't overpay. 2021, no one cared what things were worth. They just want to get on the market. So this just speaks to the fear of overpaying that's present at the moment.
I was going to say, what's your thoughts on how much confidence and market sort of noise and plays into, like, you've done auctions in, I'm sure, buyer's market, seller's market, high interest rate, low interest rate. Like, do you always notice it straight away, or not straight away? Obviously, it's gradual, but do you notice noise and media does truthfully play a part?
Yeah, of course it does. I get cold shudders when I see the interest rates go up because I know what's going to happen in every negotiation I have that week, as every buyer will tell me about it.
Yeah.
The worst case scenario we have is when you pick up the Gold Coast Bully or the Courier Mail or the Australian or the Fin Review, and then there's an article on the front page about property prices set to soar or plummet. And you're like, oh, here we go. I've got a whole day where I've got to strap myself in. The worst day of my year, and it comes out like once a quarter, is when they release the suburb growth percentage for the quarter.
Yeah.
Because all of our reserves go up by that exact amount on every suburb. Like, what? Broadbeach Water's gone up 8.2%. Better put that reserve up, Jenny. We got it. You're just like, oh. But the media is the biggest influencer, in the world. Yep. So,
true.
And look, you can't blame people for doing that, because people in that stage, when they're looking to buy, looking to sell, are trying to take as much data on as they can. You've got to be careful about what data you do take on, because sometimes that information needs to be put into context around what is kind of actually real and what isn't present. But yeah, there's a huge impact. Absolutely.
Just the last sort of 15 minutes there, I'm just thinking, if I was a buyer listening, I think rewind and just, it's good to plan all that stuff that Justin said in your brain, just because I'm noticing, not all the time, there's some really savvy buyers out there, 100%. We've worked with a few as well. They're very savvy and they know how to assess markets. But then there's also some that are going through pain, and a big pain point is they're not finding what they want, and they're not finding in their budget. And I always ask how you're quantifying value, and it's like they're using things from, as you said, 3, 6, 12. Even some people quantifying from 2021 and different things. And just what Justin's saying there is it clearly states you've always got to look in the now, and also, how big emotion plays in it, naivety, past, those sorts of things. Because at the end of the day, you ask a lot of people as well, do you regret not, maybe that extra 5K, last year on that property? 95% of people do have those kind of regrets, don't they? Once they realize, I was being probably too emotional in that stage. And with sellers as well, they could have sold that for the
and we've had a lot of those sellers that's happened, and buyers that matter. But it's interesting around buyers. I think that every buyer, I think, and you'd know this better than I would, but most buyers enter the market as a bargain hunter. They go, we're just trying to find bargain, and then they have to get corrected off that mindset. And we say to buyers all now, then when they say, we're just out to pick up a bargain, it's kind of like, well, bargains don't exist anymore. There's too much competition for property. So you're not going to find a bargain. And even if you were the only person you found a bargain, the seller still has to agree to sell it to you, and they're not going to sell it to you at a bargain. So you're either going to have the mindset that we're here to buy a property based upon what we want, and here's what we have to spend, or you've got to sort of take the mentality of we're unlikely to buy anything. Because if you're just waiting for a bargain to fall in your lap, there's just too much promotion around properties now where they just don't slip through the cracks, and you're the only person who finds it.
Yeah, love it. Mindful of time, but there's one thing before we wrap up. This will be a good one because I get a lot of agents listening, and you spoke a little bit on Eric around I think it was the auction process and the percentage with having offers in that maybe first 2 weeks or whatever it was. Can you explain a little bit on that? Because that was gold. I wrote it down at Eric, and I was like, that's gold.
Yeah, so we say statistically the third offer is the one that the seller takes the most notice of.
Yeah.
The reason why is the first offer comes in, they can write it off as an isolated opinion on behalf of the buyer. Second offer comes in, they then say, it's still another isolated opinion, or it's because, the ad looks like this, or the weather's like this, or whatever. The third offer comes in, it starts to become a consensus. So we talk about the rule of 3. So if you get 3 written offers on an auction prior to auction day, the clearance rate of 3 or more offers is 96%.
90-something%. Yeah, I heard that.
So you're just about a statistical certainty. And there's 2 reasons. One is that your seller gets the information they need to understand where the property sits in the market.
Yep.
The second one is it also commits buyers. Making offers a form of commitment for a buyer. And in a market where buyers have commitment issues, the more we can engage buyers, the better. And we say to buyers all the time, look, there's no drawback about making an offer prior to auction. Buyers want to keep all their cards close to their chest and not reveal anything. But if you put forward an offer at a figure that you'd love to buy it for, treat it as an information gathering exercise. Sure, you're probably not going to buy it, but whatever you hear back is going to help you with your information, and that's going to be more around your information when you come to buy it. So there's certainly no harm in doing that. The other thing we say to buyers is, look, if you want my seller to meet the market, you as the market have to play your part and give them the information they need to understand the market.
It's a great one.
It's like people who drive, I'm one of these people, worst candidate for this, but who sit in traffic and complain about the traffic. It's like, well, you are the traffic.
Yeah.
You know, it's like buyers say to us, oh, the seller won't meet the market. And you're like, well, you're the market. So give us something to help the seller understand the market. Oh, we're not going to make an offer. It's like, well, how do you expect my seller to understand the market if everyone takes the same tact as you and doesn't give my seller anything to understand?
Really good.
Yeah.
Really good. I always say that's gold right there, because it's so true. Like, I always try to educate buyers. Like, I mean, if you don't say anything, you're not in it to win it. Like, at the end of that, and because I've been a sales agent in my past life as well, mate, they actually want offers to help educate. Yeah, it's very, very true. And a little tip I always give the buyers as well: when you give an offer pre-auction as well, it really engages you as the buyer to either the agent and the seller. That, like, hey, if something does occur, because, mate, a pain point I've seen, some buyers, no, I'm not revealing my cards. They've sold it without them not good.
How dare you let us know? Well, I tried to call you 8 times, send you 4 text messages, 3 emails, and you didn't reply to any of them.
100%. So there's a few really good tips there. And as I said, if you are a buyer there's a property you like at auction, I always suggest, putting something forward. Yeah. So even for the sake of Mr. and Mrs. A, if something was to go or there's a formal negotiation, can you let me know? Yeah. Because so many buyers hate not being, like, noticed, but you ask them, did you put it an offer? Like, did you let the agent know you're keen? It's like, no, I was playing cool.
Well, you played real cool. Yeah, real cool. Yeah.
Mate, a few ones to finish on. We had a few questions come in, but, mate, this is a selfish one. I've noticed, just quickly.
Not like real estate people to be selfish, mate. I speak that as an auctioneer who's also in this industry, by the way. Yeah.
Quick one on, like, personal brand. This is just, I love marketing and personal. I've really noticed you, like, tick up your content and things like that. Apollo auctions versus just the Nickerson. Like, I don't know. I've just noticed last 12 months you as a brand, like, where'd that come from? Is it intentional? Like, you know?
Yeah, it's a really good point. I was actually having a conversation with this last night with Michael Koloshi, who I was going to say we're similar because we're different in a lot of different ways, but he's got a brand and a company, and he's got his own individual performance. So I think the thing around Apollo for me has been that I've always been really mindful of, I don't want this brand to be me. I want this brand to be us. And even to the point where when I speak, you know, I quite often in error say we rather than me, because it is we. Like, it's 31 auctioneers across Australia and New Zealand. It's admin staff, it's support staff, it's marketing support. Like, you know, we're a bigger vehicle now than we've ever been. So we are a we. And if everything that we put on social media is about Justin Nickerson and about his auctions and about his training and about what he does, then it becomes about me. And I think this is something that I've tried to be more mindful of, is that gravitating away from an individual performer to a team environment where we all contribute. You know, and this is something that Michael, you know, no doubt has that challenge too. Like, he's got some amazing performers in his brand, and they've made a deliberate push to try and push other people in their brand to be the stars. One of the most pleasing moments I had, I'm not sure when we're releasing this, but just recently, the auction that broke the Queensland sales residential record up in the Corso, sold for 24 million under the hammer. It wasn't me calling; it was one of our team, Rob Dorey, and Rob did an amazing job that night. Did a great call, and that sale will do wonders for his confidence and his profile. And it's probably a better thing that he did it than I did it, because it's going to probably benefit him more than it would benefit me. Now, that's not to say I didn't call him last Friday and give him a call and just make sure he didn't have laryngitis. And, you know, mate, the throat, you sound a bit scratchy. Is the throat okay? You know, you want me to jump in? But that's part of that there. I think the other thing that I've done is we probably ramped up our social media content a lot in the last couple of years. And that, for me, the kind of recognition has been that I actually feel comfortable in a space of putting it out on socials. For a while there, I wasn't confident enough in what I was producing to actually put it out to the masses. So I sort of kept it here. I see now some auctioneers and some trainers basically from day one are putting their first auctions up with highlight packages, and A, I wish I had that confidence to do that. B, I'm not sure if you're calling your first auction that you've got many highlights yet. I think you're better off slaving away in silence until you have something that's really compelling that people, can look at and go, oh, gee, I actually think that's pretty good and pretty impressive. So that's been something also, is probably having the confidence to push it out there on a wider level, because once you do push it out there, you do open yourself up for criticism. People don't agree with what you're saying, or people will critique your style, or they'll have an opinion, or they'll say, I don't like this. Like, we put a bit of content up last week around some vendor dialogue, and there's a couple of words in there that I put it up and I felt a little bit uneasy about the words that I use, because we do work for sellers, but we talk about how we protect sellers from naivety and their greed. And I didn't want that to come across negatively across sellers, but that's part of producing content, is you can't just produce something that everyone's going to look at and go, I 100% agree with that. You've got to put stuff up that people are going to look at and go, how do I feel about that? So for us, but coming back to the original question, it's been a focus to build us as a team rather than be me, because the hard part about being an auctioneer is, you are, if you're a lone wolf, you live and die by how many auctions you call. And if you want to go away, you want to go on a holiday, you want to take a weekend off, or 2 weeks ago, I had a really bad sinus infection, so I missed the whole weekend of auctions. I had to call the team to do it. If that was just me, that would have been a really big drama. Now, it was still a small drama, but it wasn't much of a drama because we have such a big team that can capably and comfortably cover them. So, it has been definitely a push to do that.
Yeah, no, mate, it's credit to you. I love people's personal brands and stuff. I've noticed you've intentionally, being consistent, which is cool. And it's probably another selfish one, but that I love, like, this industry, real estate industry. It's very service based. It's time for jam. So what I mean is the scale of, say, real estate agent to principal to owner, auctioneer, same as me. I'm going through it now, buyer's agent to CEO. Like, where do you see yourself? Because auctioneer is the exact same. You can be the best auctioneer or have the best company. Do you agree you could do both? Like, what is Justin Nickerson striving for? You feel like, are you always going to be that technician? You love doing the auctions?
Yeah, I think I'll always love doing auctions because it is a passion that I have had, and I think I'll continue to have for quite a while. But I think that, and you mentioned on there, is that it's that change of mindset from everything's about me to everything is about we or that growth. So, and this is why a lot of really, really good sales agents really struggle as principals, because to be a great agent or be a great technician at anything, whether it's a buyer's agent, whether it's an auctioneer, whether it's a sales agent, you need to be selfish, because you really have to focus on achieving what you want and your outcomes, and everything else, not everything else, but a lot of stuff goes by the wayside in single-minded pursuit of your goals. The second that you become a leader, you need to start thinking almost the complete opposite to that, to think, okay, and what I'm doing today serving the rest of my team. The hard part is when you're doing both. So right now, like you are and I am, I am doing both. So yesterday when I had 4 auctions and 4 training sessions that we delivered. Now they're all selfishly to benefit me, because they about my auctions and my auction numbers and our clients. Now you could argue they benefit the wider team because we're doing it as a business, but they're really selfishly to do me. So then where does the leadership fit into that? Like, how many of my team did I reach out to yesterday? How many did I have conversations around them? How do I help them in pursuit of their goals? So the toughest part, I think, is when you're balancing both. If you're doing one or the other, it's quite simple. As soon as you start trying to do both, it becomes much more challenging. And for me, it's just being mindful of it and allocating time that I'm focusing on the team rather than my individual pursuits.
Yep. Would you ever look at scale, like maybe getting a management sector of the business in, or like do you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
We got a few irons in the fire that we're working on at the moment. Awesome. So we got really cool growth prospects for our business. Unreal. But for us, it's also about sustainable growth. Like we could have 100 auctioneers in our books tomorrow, and 80 of them would call very few auctions, and we'd look like a big team. There's no point in doing that. We want to have team members who are actively engaged, who are calling auctions, who enjoy not only what they do but also our business. So we're also mindful of that. Yeah,
mate, love it. Great feedback, mate. As we wrap up, did a little push it out there. Got a few questions from the community, mate. First one, just simple. Top 3 tips for buyers bidding. Top 3.
like a speed round. Speed dating round. Yeah.
Well, let's go. Let's go. You're on that third date, kind of. You know, getting to know each other a bit. Like
I would go. Even if you aren't, act confidently.
Yep.
So act confidently, like. And you're probably not. You're probably got 1,000 emotions going through there, but act confidently. Secondly is have a plan. So have those 3 figures ready to go before the auction. Have a plan. The last one is do something. The auction will not fall in your lap. Yeah, we spoke about this the last time we were on the podcast, is the paddles that we give out are not automatic paddles. They're manual paddles. You've got to operate them. Like getting a paddle is not a win. Yeah. Anyone can do that. Yeah. Like anyone can do that. The win is putting a paddle in the air and participating. So we have so many buyers, their first time at an auction, they want to wait, see what happens. All they do is basically get run over by a steam train and hand their paddle back at the end and go, I hate auctions. Yeah. Well, you hate auctions because you didn't participate. So it's like, I want to win the lotto this week. I really want to win the lotto. I've got to win the 80 million. Did you buy a ticket? Nah. Like that's the same thing, mate. You got to put your paddle in the air.
Love it. Do you do training continuously? Like in terms of, I guess, yourself and your business? Do you have a cadence on training?
Yeah, we do. We got a strong focus on it. Our responsibility to our owners is being the best possible auctioneer version of ourselves. So we focus on that quite intently. We have group sessions as a team. We also do auctioneer mentor sessions. We have outside auctioneers come in and mentor our team to provide different sort of strategies around how they can grow their call. We're continually training, and you have to. Because it keeps evolving. You know, what auctioneers were doing 10 years ago now is outdated. What we're doing today will be outdated in 5 years' time. And if I just keep doing the same call, there'll be people that'll bypass me and our team.
What's the key thing you look at with that, like changing strategies as an auctioneer? Is it more you're assessing what the market's doing, what the vendor, like?
Yeah. The word we always come back to is engagement. So how are you best engaging bidders in the crowd? Now, that can be a variety of ways, like depending on the crowd size, location, weather, buyer behaviour. So how you best engaging the crowd. One of the underpinning things we talk with our auctioneers about is that the crowd will take on your energy. So whatever energy you bring as an auctioneer, the crowd will respond. So you'll find if there's a really aggressive auctioneer, and there's some that are out there that kind of use aggression as their primary tool of auctioneering, the crowd will become aggressive too. You'll have more challenges around bidding, more challenges around things, like more confrontation, because that's what you're putting out there. If I put a smile on my face and I look like I'm enjoying my job, because I do, and to be honest, we're not saving the whales, it's a pretty good job that we're doing. Like, if I look like I'm relaxed and enjoying it, the crowd will relax and enjoy it back. So how am I best engaging the crowd?
That's really good. I'm just reflecting. The reason I'm looking up is because, like, you do it very well. I noticed. I said it. Someone's like, you walked up, and I was like, Justin will do like an ice break here because a big crowd. Like you always, there's a stage where I don't know, it's whether intentional or not, but you'll always get the crowd like maybe a giggle or something. Then your auctions always seem to get a bit of action, and I swear. I say, mate, he's going to pull a little like one-liner here. And
they're all original, mate. I never use the same ones over and over again. It's all original material.
That's very true. That's so true. I went to one. I'm not going to name the auctioneer. Fire out. It was intense.
Yeah. Because that's what they put out there. Yeah. And I think this has been the change is 10 years ago, the auctioneer intimidated a crowd. Yeah, they were the authoritative figure that dominated, and this is the way it's going to be, and the bids are going to be this way, and you'll basically bid. It's just not like that anymore. Yeah. Our society has changed. Our society has become more welcoming, more involving, more engaging. So should we be. Yeah. This is a stressful transaction. Let's try and make it as good as possible.
Love it. How can a videographer work with you during an auction?
Stay out of the way. That's what I say. No.
Is this something you're looking to do maybe, or get content around? I mean, you do lives and that, I notice. Yeah.
If there's a videographer there, no, look, I think we're there to sort of complement each other. We want to produce as much good scope or material as we can. I think... most of the videographers we work with, we see on a pretty regular basis. They're really good to work with. I think creative content is great. Like shots of buyers, shots of sellers with permission is always really good. Different action shots, but I think just looking for that kind of creative way, because everyone sort of does the welcome and the knockdown. Yep. What else can you show that really is going to highlight things?
Just a quick one for any bidding auctioneers or looking to make a career on it. You'd be getting into content, personal branding.
Yeah, I would, but I'd be focusing on my skill development first. Yeah, so don't put stuff out until you're at a level that people are going to be impressed by it. Yeah. Because it'll do more damage to your brand than positive vibes.
Love it. Mate, last two questions. I won't tell you who. I'll tell you after. But if you guess it, I'll let you know if it was him. The fittest agent you've called an auction for.
Fittest agent. Under what criteria? Like, could they beat me in a wrestle?
I'm assuming just all round fittest.
Oh, gee, I'm going to offend 1,000 agents here at once by naming one person. The fittest agent. In now or in their prime?
Let's go in their prime.
Well, we call auctions for one of your guests. He hasn't been a repeat guest yet, so obviously the response wasn't as strong with Troy Dowker, so he's only had the one and done. But James Roberts, who's his offsider, former Olympic 100-meter swimmer.
Yeah.
Tough to beat that.
That's a tough one to beat, actually.
But who's the name?
It's a commercial agent. Let's just put it that way.
Oh, the fittest.
Loves a bit of CrossFit.
Adam Gripchick. Yeah. Adam Gripchick. Yeah. Man, it's hard to tell with Adam because he wears kids' small shirts. I actually don't know how big he actually is. So
he's a little weapon.
He is, mate. I wouldn't want to wrestle him, that's for sure.
Yeah. And, mate, couldn't escape the potty without asking this. Current market right now, what do you see? Like, temperature check.
Yep.
We're coming just after financial year 2023. Justin Nickerson's take on the current market.
I think it's just stable. Like we've been in this kind of holding pattern with really low levels of stock for kind of 18 months. Like it's been a long period of time. I just don't see the floodgates opening with more listings coming or a lot more listings coming to the market. I think it will release slightly, but that release I think will be met by buyers now sort of getting on with life. They feel like if the interest rates haven't stopped, the worst of them has stopped, so they're probably ready to buy again. So I think we're going to keep seeing the current conditions we're in for a while.
For a while, yeah.
The disclaimer I'll put on that is I've been wrong every single time. So probably the opposite to that is going to happen. The one thing I will say is that our sold prior rates have increased recently. Sold prior rates increasing, so that's property selling prior to auction, is usually a precursor to a sign there's a market change coming. Now, whether that means up or down, I'm not ready to commit to that. So I know I'm going to sit on the fence, absolutely, but that's usually an indication that something is about to shift. Interesting. So as if people are more active putting offers in and it's getting done. So it's nearly like either buyers are meeting or we go right back to the start, the gap. So when the market increases, buyers sense it and they start to avoid competition and snap them up prior to auction. When the market drops, agents sense it, lack of competition, they wrap deals up before the auction. So it's one of those two.
One or the other. Wow, love that. So prior to auction, if they're increasing in that, a market's going somewhere.
Somewhere. Yeah. Isn't that the most general advice ever? It could go up or it could go down or it could stay the same. One of those three things is definitely going to happen. I promise you.
It's going somewhere though. Oh man, there's some absolute fire in this app. Mate, lastly, whether it's changed or not, but mate, what's the legacy piece for you? Like obviously coming in 2023, your career just keeps going strength to strength. Where can you see yourself, mate, if we were to have another interview, get you on a third time in 12 months, where would you like to be?
It's a really good question. I think the continual growth of our business is the next challenge. I was fortunate enough that you mentioned to speak at ARIC earlier on the year. That was a career goal that I got to tick off.
That was epic.
Auctioneering, I've managed to achieve some things there that are career goals as well. But I genuinely enjoy what I do, and when you enjoy it, you want to just keep doing more of it. So that's probably selfishly what I'd like to achieve. But unquestionably, the continued growth of our team, both the existing members we have and expansion into more people, other areas. Other sectors is the next sort of frontier for us. Yep. So that'll be what's ahead in the next 12 months. But yeah, I'm really excited about what's ahead of us.
If there's anyone, and I know there is, looking to walk in your shoes, mate, they want to become an auctioneer. What's the key next step? You feel like
the key step is commitment. Yeah. Like we have a lot of people that reach out saying, I want to be an auctioneer. I've got a good voice. I'm this and that. Yeah. The reality is, and we say this to every single person that comes in our business, is you've got to have the mindset that your first 2 years, you're a professional relationship creator who occasionally gets to call an auction. You can't think you're an auctioneer because you're not. Yeah. You're a professional relationship creator and occasionally you get the payoff of calling an auction. That's got to be your mindset. You can't think and walk in, you're an auctioneer straight away because you won't have anyone to do auctions for.
Love it. And where can people find it? Apollo Auctions.
Or my Instagram at Justin Nickerson.
Mate, you'll get some good stuff there. I watch his lives. He does Instagram lives, and I get the notepad out, and I get some of that dialogue, and I keep it for myself as well. So you'd get a lot of value on both of those assets. So, mate, appreciate your time. Big day of auctions up for you today.
Yep.
I'll check in this Arvo, see what the clearance rate's at,
Sounds
and we'll go from there. But, mate, appreciate your time as always.
Pleasure, Matty. Good on you.
Legend.